I don't know. All right,
Oh, there
we're
it
live.
goes.
All right, you got the notification too? Okay, so thank you for joining us, everybody, this evening. My name is Scott. I'm the recruitment director with Thinking Beyond Borders. And tonight we're going to have a chat with Erika Grad, who is a graduate of the 2014 Global Gap Year. Erika, would you like to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hi guys, I'm Erika. I am a junior at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Currently double majoring in African history and human rights studies and a minor in Arabic. Yeah. Graduate of the
Awesome.
class of 2014 from
Yeah, right?
TVB.
Which feels like such a long time ago now.
I know.
Which I suppose is probably why you're about to graduate from college pretty soon.
Yeah.
And so we were actually just chatting about this. So you were almost about to graduate in 3 years, but didn't quite get under the bar. Not to toot TVB's horn, I'm curious, did you come in with a ton of AP credits and stuff like that, or is it just because you were focused?
I actually didn't come in with that many APs. I think I came in with 4 AP credits, which got me ahead a semester, which is why I'm able to graduate a semester early. But I really just buckled down and kind of covered all my bases early. Like I said, my 2 majors, African history and human rights, have a surprising amount of overlap. So a lot of the classes that I took for one major accounted for the other, and that's why I was kind of able to get ahead. I was also abroad for a year in Cape Town, South Africa, so I was able to knock out a ton of credits and do a lot of internship work and research for my thesis. So it kind of all just worked out really nicely.
Excellent. And so speaking about your thesis, for people who weren't here in just mine and Erika's conversation before, we just about dove into the thesis. So I'm curious, you're saying you're writing a double thesis. So what's the topic?
So I'm doing a dual, it's for both of my degrees, or for both of my majors. I'm doing a combined thesis for, it's called an honors thesis. Essentially, you graduate with honors if you do a thesis for more than one major. And I am looking at Zimbabwean migrant labor and their migration patterns into South African urban centers like Cape Town and Johannesburg, and how recent rises in xenophobia throughout South Africa has affected their ability to sort of create communities for themselves within the host country, and kind of looking at it through a diasporic lens and seeing how like transnational migration is affecting abilities for different minority groups to incorporate in new countries.
That's fascinating. And actually, this is totally unrelated to Gap Year, but now I just want to ask you questions about this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I was a program leader in South Africa, I felt like I heard people talking about this issue as being something that was really central to some people's understanding of one of the plights facing modern South Africa, right? That Zimbabweans were coming in and stealing jobs. Is that really how much immigration is there in terms of absolute numbers? How big of an impact does it actually seem to have on job markets, on life?
Well, it kind of, a lot of it has to do with the history of South Africa, which has a very unique history. I mean, obviously they had 50 plus years of apartheid, and once they became an established democracy in 1994, they ended up reopening their borders. So they had this massive influx of migrant laborers, not just from Zimbabwe, but from all over Africa. There's a huge Nigerian community throughout South Africa. A lot of mine workers come from countries like Lesotho, Swaziland, Zambia, Angola. I don't know exact statistics, but I know that Zimbabwe, I think, constitutes either the second or third largest migrant group in South Africa. And most of the economy in South Africa is actually informal. So, they just kind of pop up shops and, sell out of their homes and do what they can to make money. So I guess the main issue is, like, especially with the mine workers, it's a huge industry in South Africa. So a lot of South African workers are upset over the fact that that mining companies can hire really cheap labor, so they prefer to take Zimbabwean migrants over South Africans, and that's really upsetting them. So they're trying to ban unions, and they're, attacking Zimbabwean settlements within the informal sector. They've been burning a lot of businesses and things like that. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you got to do that research hands-on with a year abroad in Cape Town?
I didn't directly do the research because I hadn't really worked on my thesis. I went abroad my sophomore year.
Fair
So
enough. Fair enough.
I actually interned at a museum while I was there,
Hmm.
which kind of sparked my interest in it. It was the Migrant Labor Museum in Cape Town. And again, with the history of apartheid, it was a place that was designated for Black African workers coming from other rural parts of South Africa. So these were South African workers, and they were working practically as slave labor in the city of Cape Town, and they weren't allowed to necessarily go into the city. So they were contained to kind of like the rural outskirts of Cape Town, and they were only allowed to send money home to their families, and they weren't allowed to like have their wives and children visit. So that kind of sparked my interest in human rights, and then also wanting to expand this idea of migrant labor to an international scale and looking at Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and Swaziland.
That's fascinating, and I can definitely see how probably your time in TV, not to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing your time in TVB, your gap year experience there, fed into that.
Oh,
curiosity around
absolutely.
human rights, and then down,
Yeah.
all those pieces put together. That's really
I just
interesting.
fell in love with South Africa when I was there. I just felt so at home, and it's honestly, I would consider moving back there full time after college if I can find a job. So it's on my radar.
Very different climate from Chicago. Very different.
Oh, yeah, beaches, mountains versus sub 30. Can't complain.
Yeah. Although I understand Chicago's lovely in the summertime. I've always only been there in the wintertime.
Summer,
So.
yeah. No, I quite like it in the summer. I can't say I really miss it this time of year, but yeah, it was a great little place to grow up.
Awesome. So let's dive into the gap year part of the conversation then maybe. Let's start at the beginning, which is, where were you at? Were you 18 as you finished high school? And you're thinking about going off to college, but also thinking about a gap year. What led you to decide that a gap year was the right fit for you? And then ultimately TVB was in that subset the right fit for you?
Yeah, so I knew that after high school I was not ready to go to college. Actually, I don't think it's that I wasn't necessarily ready. It's that I just didn't want to put myself through 4 straight years of, just grinding away, doing work all day. And I also figured, it's the time to travel and explore not only the world, but figure out like who I am and what I want to be as, a global citizen. That was the best opportunity to do it. So I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to pick TVB right away. I went to a gap year fair, and I looked at a bunch of different programs, but I knew that I wanted to sort of keep an academic focus so I wouldn't stray too far away and have to completely readjust when I went back to college. So I just thought that TVB was the perfect fit. And, the academic aspect was really important to me, just without, having to be graded on everything and having the pressure to, make it super feel like it was college. So.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'm curious. I think that a lot of students probably relate to what you're saying. The sense that it's not that you're not ready for college; it's that you've already done a lot of time.
Yeah.
You're ready for
break.
Right, a break, but also, like you said, learning that's not the same kind of learning. Right, that's going to help you dig into what feels like it really matters. That's awesome. I'm curious, as you came into TVB, as you started on your gap year, did you have any particular goals about how you wanted to grow or change?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. I went into college. I mean, I had plans in my mind thinking that I was going to be a doctor and go to med school. And then I went on this like amazing life-changing experience with TVB. And I was like, I don't feel fulfilled doing that. I was exposed to so many different cultures and different people, and the whole academic portion of it just really like expanded my mind. It was like a big bang in my head. And it made me so much more aware of like not only my place in the world, but just everything that was going on around me. And I'd been like fairly well traveled before TVB, but it just felt so much more personal to have that experience for myself without any like set expectations. And I feel like that's just something really important, because you can learn a certain way in a classroom, but I feel that traveling the world gives you a perspective that you can't get from a textbook. And that's something that's really important to gaining a certain level of maturity that you might not necessarily have. And I didn't have that maturity coming out of high school. Like, I totally wasn't ready to like live on my own and, you know, fend for myself. And then when I went out into the world and kind of found where I wanted to put myself in the future, it all made it so much more worthwhile to me.
Excellent. So I feel like for me, the same thing happened as a program leader. Like, I traveled a lot. I'd lived in Japan for 5 years, actually, before becoming a program leader. You didn't know that about me.
I don't think I did know that, actually.
Yeah. But I feel like the TVB set of experiences, that those homestays were really powerful, right? Like, getting to spend that kind of time with a family is, like you were saying, it's so much deeper than just travel, right? And then also, I think for me, what was really interesting was learning with that group of fellow students, travelers, right? That surprisingly pushed me. I'm kind of a book learner by nature. I'm someone who likes to kind of break out the books, do the research, and that really pushed me and I'm supposed to be the teacher. It pushed my thinking in terms of having you students engaged with really asking these questions every day. That was really interesting for me. I'm curious, what was your, not to be too like, hey, you went on TVB, what's your favorite, whatever. What was your favorite aspect of that part of the TVB experience?
Well, like you said, I think the group dynamic is so important, because as much as you like travel to do soul searching, it was really important to kind of have a cohort that you could really confide in. And I'm not going to lie, it got really tough. Like, I think I reached my breaking point in China. I was just like, I want to go home. I want to sleep in my own bed. I want like American food. And the group is just so individual, filled with so many interesting individuals, and they're so strong, and they all have their own sort of global mindset, and it kind of just helps you expand your own personal journey. And I think that it's such a great support system to have, and it just, really enriches your whole experience. So I think that was probably my favorite part. And I'm still in touch with, I'd say, almost all of them, which is amazing. Like, they're going to be lifelong friends too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great to hear. As you're well aware, Erika, last weekend was our most recent Global Gap Year's graduation event.
I heard. I was so bummed I couldn't be there.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. We had about 40 alumni almost that showed up.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Out of like 200, 220 total alumni, we had about 40 that came.
That's incredible.
We had, after POLs, we had a session just for the alumni where we had two alumni, one from the first year and one from 2012, who led a session talking about refugee and immigration law in the United States currently, and what that looks like and what are their problems. And it was amazing to see TVBers teaching TVBers. Like,
that's so cool.
Students who've headed off into their professional lives, and then being able to share that back with TVBers from every year since. I mean, there were some who had just graduated, who that was their graduation weekend, who were in that room participating in that conversation. And then, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, to think about that community and how broad it is, not just within that 1 year that you're in, but also.
I mean, it's just further proof that like we have such a strong network and we can rely on each other, and we all have like such unique interests, but we all have like the same roots, which I think is really cool. So there's infinite possibilities. Yeah,
the sky's the limit. I'm curious, building on going back into your experience as a gap year student, were there things that you were nervous about as you got ready to depart? And how did that play out? How did you deal with it? How did it end up really being? Was it unfounded, et cetera?
Honestly, like looking back, I became like so comfortable with everything that it's kind of hard to remember what I was really nervous about. I guess just like being away from home for so long. And I'm not usually one to get homesick because I travel so much that like I just kind of get used to it. But it was the fact that like I wasn't able to see my family, and you start to kind of miss the comforts of home. You get pushed so far out of your comfort zone in certain situations that, you know, like little things when like you don't sleep well at night because your bed's not the most comfortable. It's just those little things that you kind of have to overcome. But I wouldn't say anything was like terribly insanely out of my comfort zone. It was more just like having to slowly adjust. But I think one of the hardest things definitely for me was because we're only in each place for 7 or 8 weeks, right when you really start to acclimate and get adjusted and really attached to your host family and your surroundings, you kind of pack up and leave and go straight to the next place, and they're so drastically different from one another that it kind of takes a toll on you mentally. So I just think you have to kind of push through and have a really tough, be tough mentally in order to handle something like that. But again, like the cohort of friends that I went with was just so supportive in helping everyone adjust.
Yeah, I feel like that's that idea of, can you hear me, Erika?
Yeah.
Okay. The little lights weren't lighting up on my screen. So that idea of comfort zones and kind of, you know, part of, obviously you've probably figured out by now, part of that design of shifting countries so quickly is that right as you begin to get into one of those medium points in your culture shock where you've had the rough spot, you've had the low, you've come back to being flat, and then we change things again, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is that you never get too comfortable. So you're constantly, like, as soon as you start to take things for granted, you're like, boom, new country, new community, new
you definitely always have to be on your toes.
Set of questions. Yeah. Excellent. I'm curious, as you look back now on your gap year, what are some of like the key important lessons? I'll say that I talk to alumni often who say like every day something new pops up. Like I'm always learning something new from my TVB gap year. And that I wasn't expecting that it's different. What I take away from it is different on day one after the program from year 1 to year 2 to year 3.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what are some of the big takeaways for you?
Well, for me, definitely, I just learned to question everything, whether you agree or disagree. The best way to learn and to, kind of pick at people's brains is to just question them, play devil's advocate, and don't be afraid to be wrong. I mean, all of those readings that we did for TBB were there for a purpose, and I think that was really a way for me to sort of become a more engaged learner. I've always been kind of timid in the classroom and not really participated, but especially being at such a small school, my college is only 2,300 students and my largest class is 12 people, so it's very heavily discussion based, and I think that TBB has more than prepared me to, engage in a way that I wasn't really comfortable doing in high school. And I think that's so important because as soon as you do get to college, you're interacting with people from so many different backgrounds, and just the fact that you come to college so much more well-traveled and just more aware of what's going on in the world, it makes you able to make those connections and sort of be more well-spoken and able to voice your opinion in a way that I think a lot of people are afraid to do. And I don't necessarily harbor those same reservations anymore.
Outstanding. That's good to hear. I'm glad to know that it's paid off well. And then it sounds like with classes of size 12, you got to work for it.
Yeah, I mean, participation's 30% of our grade. You might as well just say whatever's on your mind.
Yeah. I'm curious. I just had a conversation today, a lengthy conversation with a parent whose student is thinking about a gap year, and they were asking questions about kind of a lot of the ways that we do this, and it occurred to me as you were saying, kind of, TBB has prepared you, but honestly, TBB didn't prepare you to do anything. TBB set up the opportunities. I think you took advantage of them, and part of that was you. Part of that was your peer group, right, of the students pushing each other and supporting each other. Part of that's probably also the program leaders. Who are your program leaders, and what was that relationship like?
So my program leaders,
in your experience?
Yeah, I was with Chris, Jesse, and Vanessa. They were my program leaders, and my group leader was Vanessa. And I just remember, if I was having a bad day, or if, there was just something that I wanted to talk about, they were always there to talk to. I've had some insanely emotional and deep, like, heart-to-heart conversations with them. I remember just like breaking down in India because I had like a really bad day or I was homesick or something, and they were just so accommodating, and they were there and they talked to me for like hours and hours, and it was just, they're like brothers and sisters to me now. So they're a great outlet for, any questions, any problems, anything like that. They're such a good resource, and they're so intelligent and like well accommodating, and also like very globally minded, and they were just as engaged in the conversations as we were. It wasn't like they were necessarily teaching us as learning it with us, which I think was really, really awesome as well.
People on the outside won't get this, but I saw Chris this January. Hung out with him for a little bit. He's doing well. And then I also saw Vanessa this February as well. She's obviously doing really well.
She's about to have her baby, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
Oh my gosh.
Exciting.
Time flies. She wasn't even married when
I know.
when I went with her.
We should stop sharing her personal details online, but excellent. Yeah. It's amazing, thinking back on my time as a program leader, it's really powerful. It's, I did some teaching in Japan before that, and had thought about teaching as a career. And it's hard to think about coming back to it because nothing's going to compare to TVB. Nothing's going to compare to that relationship that we develop with students, and the kind of the depth of learning that happens there and the depth of connection. It's really awesome. If you could grab young 18-year-old Erika by the shoulders and give her one or two pieces of advice as she heads out on her gap year, what advice would you give her?
Oh, that's tough. I would say just do it. Like, if it feels right, do it. If you doubt yourself, do it, because you're going to regret it if you don't. I didn't want to do that bungee jump in South Africa, but I did it. I didn't like it, but I did it. I don't regret it. So I don't know, like there's so many opportunities afforded to you through this program, and I just think that it's so important that you take advantage of everything, because when are you ever going to get the chance to do that again? And maybe something that you didn't want to do becomes your new favorite thing, or you realize that you should question something that you were afraid to speak up about, and it just like kind of blows your mind with the way that a conversation goes with a question that you have. So I just say, don't hold back. You don't want to live with regrets. Yeah,
I was thinking about that kind of comfort zone stuff. It's kind of that issue of embracing the discomfort, right? Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think you mentioned that in our emails back and forth leading up to this, but it's true. Like it's where you're at 18 is developing that sense of how do you push your comfort zone, and as a result, hopefully grow your capacity to understand issues, to understand yourself, to understand your place in the world. It's an amazing set of experiences. Let's see. I have one last question for you, Erika.
Sure.
No, sorry. I have two questions. First one, a very TVBS question. Who are your heroes?
Oh, that's hard. Gosh, probably my mom, because she runs her own nonprofit. She started it from scratch, and I grew up around let me backtrack. It's a program that's dedicated to fostering relations between Israeli and Palestinian teens, and she founded it shortly after 9/11. I think their first summer doing the program was in 2003, and I was so young at the time, I didn't really learn to appreciate what that really meant, but I kind of spent my whole childhood growing up around, really intense and at the forefront of these global issues. And I think that's kind of what sparked my passion a lot for not only traveling, but just to kind of understand how the world works. And so I don't know, she does so much. And yeah, I've just always kind of looked up to her, and her work ethic is incredible. And I think I get it from her. I hope I get it from her. But yeah, so I definitely say she's one of them for sure.
Fantastic. She's an amazing lady. And then my last question, which is a very TVB question. What is development?
Honestly, after all these years, I still couldn't answer that fully for you. I think development on a global level has to, I don't even know where I'm going to go with that. I don't know. I think I can speak more to like personal development, and for me, just, you know, like everything that I said before, you know, just being pushed in such a way that I was able to really, you know, become so globally minded. And now I want to make it my future to go out and give back to the community that gave so much to me in that year that I was abroad. So yeah, I can't speak to global development. It's such a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I totally relate. I have a master's degree in international development. I struggle still. TV has helped kind of blow that up for me.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of different directions I can take that conversation, I feel like. Yeah.
There's no right answer. There's no right or wrong answer, honestly. It's all about like how you perceive the world and how you want to place yourself in it as a global citizen, and what you want to do with that.
Yeah. We do have a question from someone who was watching briefly.
Oh.
They're not actually still watching, unfortunately.
Okay.
I missed it, but they want to know why you have an Indian flag behind you.
Why I have an Indian flag? Well, I have multiple flags, but my mom did this tradition where, while I was on my gap year, every time I was in a country, she would fly the flag of whatever country I was in, and then all the neighbors would ask, why are you flying the Indian flag, or why are you flying the Ecuadorian flag? And it was just a really good conversation starter, and all my neighbors were like, oh, she's so cool, like, but that's how we keep up with wherever the grads are in the world, by whatever flag they're flying. And my sister took a gap year through a different program, and the name is escaping me, but my mom did the same thing for her. She was in Fiji and New Zealand, and she would always fly the flag, so my sister was gone. So it's just something cute that my mom likes to do.
Did she fly the South African flag while you were studying abroad?
She did. Yeah, Perfect. But my sister was also on her gap year while I was abroad, so she alternated, like every couple of months she would switch it.
I was gonna say, you have like 4 or 5 flag holders out in front of the house. Does she swap the flag out before she travels? She like sticks one out when she departs on a trip, and that's great. Okay, so Erika, you're about to wrap up school in December. Knock on wood. Although it sounds like a foregone conclusion at this point. Although good luck with that thesis. Those things are
I had so many late nights in the library. But it's all gonna be so worth it in the end. Like it sucks in the moment, but when you're done with it, you can be so proud of it, and it can really like open up possibilities for your future. So yeah, I'm really excited to be done with it and to see what other people think about it.
Yeah, right. So, it's every couple of months I resort my office and I find my master's thesis and I pull it out and I'll put it on the kitchen counter, and my wife will walk by and she's like, oh, and I'm like, hey, this is my master's thesis. You know, I worked on this for like 2 years. It's impressive. You should read it. And she's like, yeah.
It's daunting. It's a daunting task for anyone out there that doesn't want to do a thesis. Do it. Totally worth it. It's going to be horrible while you do it, but it's going to totally pay off in the end. Like I said, accept all challenges. No regrets.
It's a huge intellectual challenge and a big achievement. So a preemptive congratulations on what I'm sure is a good great thesis. Erika, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck as you head off into your summer and then the fall, and wherever life takes you, possibly the Peace Corps next.
Yes, and I will be departing for Benin in January. I have been afforded a research grant to do ethnographic research on West African voodoo culture, so I will be there in January for about a month. Very excited for that. And then off to the Peace Corps.
That's amazing. Erika, thank you for being part of the TVB community. Thanks for sharing your evening. We'll let you get back to your thesis. I'm sure Friday night you must be knee-deep in your thesis.
Oh, God. It never ends. It never ends.
Yeah.
5 more weeks.
We'll say goodbye now, and thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me, Scott. Have a good night.